Hello, I'm James Azimoha. Welcome to African News. Let's see your headlines. Members of the Libyan Red Crescent recover bodies believed to be migrants along the shoreline. Mass funeral for 6 victims of the Palm Sunday attack held in Plateau State, Nigeria. And Rwanda marks the 32nd anniversary of the 1994 genocide. Members of the Libyan Red Crescent have recovered bodies believed to be migrants along the coast of Misrata. The remains were found and taken from the shoreline as part of a recovery operation. Dangerous sea conditions in the Mediterranean have made crossings more risky this year, despite fewer departures. The International Organization for Migration says at least 683 people have died on the central route this year, one of the highest tolls since 2014. A mass funeral for 6 victims of the Palm Sunday attack in Plateau State, Nigeria, was held. At least 30 people were killed during the attack by gunmen on a university community on 29th of March. Earlier, Joint Task Force operatives had taken 3 suspects from the community as part of the investigation. In response, however, residents blocked the entrance to the local gospel church, demanding that the youths be released. Despite the tendency to portray violence in south-central Nigeria as ethno-religious, experts say climate change and agricultural pressures driving land competition are the main causes.
This thing has not just affected Ngwarukuba, it has affected everywhere. In Bokos, where I come from, we lost 2. One of the other person that was killed and one was injured. He died. We're burying him in Bokos tomorrow.
Families in central Nigeria are calling for justice after a deadlock or deadly attack in the city of Jos as authorities step up security measures and launch an investigation.
Grief and anger are growing in Jos, central Nigeria, after gunmen opened fire on the Ngwarukuba community, killing around 30 people on March 29th. Families gathered to mourn their loved ones, calling for those responsible to be brought to justice.
When we turned the other side, where they laid the corpses down on the floor, the first person we saw, he was the one that even saw him first. It's C. Magburi. And this child is my hope. He is at 400 level. We have struggled for him to get to that stage, and suddenly they cut his life short. It was so painful, so painful.
The area includes housing for students and staff from a nearby university. In the aftermath, some residents have begun leaving, while authorities imposed a curfew in parts of the city to restore order.
We have laws in this country. We have the Anti-Terrorism Act that has spelled out what is to be done to anybody who has been found to be culpable. We should be having the political will to make sure that we go hold the whole hog and let whoever is the perpetrator who has been found to be guilty to face the wrath of the law. And once we do that, it will send a lot of signal down the spines of people.
President Bola Tinubu visited the city to meet victims' families and local officials, pledging stronger security measures, including the deployment of around 5,000 intelligence-enabled cameras. Security forces have also increased their presence, with about 850 additional troops deployed across Plateau State. Authorities say an investigation is underway to determine who carried out the attack.
Rwanda has marked the 32nd anniversary of the 1994 genocide. The ceremony took place at the Genocide Memorial, where the remains of around 250,000 victims are kept. Choirs and an orchestra performed during the event. The President and First Lady lit the memorial flame and laid a wreath. Starting from 7th April 1994, over a period of 100 days, Tutsis and moderate Hutus were killed. The massacres were carried out by Hutu extremists. The annual Kibuka commemoration period lasts for 100 days. During this time, more than 1 million victims are remembered.
It's chose to rebuild our country together.
There are some who pretend that the genocide against the Tutsi was a spontaneous event. That's not true. It was carefully prepared and carried out in plain sight. Rwandans chose to rebuild our country. Together with that came a promise to never let the politics of genocide take root ever again. I tell you, genocide cannot happen here again. It won't happen
here again. It won't.
Africa's largest refinery has now taken action by stepping up exports as global supply disruptions linked to the Iran war continue to impact energy and food markets.
Dangote Group says its refinery in Lagos, the largest in Africa, is ramping up exports of gasoline and urea fertilizer to countries across the continent facing supply shortages. Chairman Aliko Dangote said shipments have increased in recent days as buyers turn to alternative sources amid ongoing disruptions.
The challenges are many. One is of urea, which is fertilizer that we have. I think in the last couple of days we've been loading to mostly African countries, which we are not doing before. And then now is to do with also petroleum products, which are now sending mainly to African countries.
Operating at full capacity of around 650,000 barrels per day, the refinery has shipped about 17 cargoes of gasoline across Africa, while urea exports have also risen, supported by annual production capacity of up to 3 million metric tons. During a visit by Amina Mohammed, officials highlighted the facility's role in easing pressure on fuel and fertilizer supplies. The United Nations says increased output could help limit the risk of a wider food security crisis.
I think the UN's job here is to amplify and to put visibility on the possibilities of mitigating a food security crisis, and this is one of them. I hope that when we go back, that we can continue to talk to the partners that will partner, the countries that should partner with the Dangote industries.
However, fuel prices in Nigeria remain at record highs due to elevated global crude costs, with Dangote saying the refinery is seeking more locally priced crude to help reduce prices.
Meanwhile, the Middle East conflict is putting renewed pressure on global food markets. The United Nations warns prices have now increased for a second consecutive month, driven largely by gains in vegetable oils and sugar.
Global food prices rose for a second straight month in March, driven largely by higher energy costs linked to escalating tensions in the Middle East. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization says its food price index climbed 2.4% month on month, with vegetable oils and sugar leading the increase.
And the reason is simple. This is directly linked to the oil prices that has been going up. So both oilseeds and sugar for ethanol production are related to the energy markets. And that's why we are observing an increase. On the food commodities, the cereals, especially wheat, maize, and so on, we are not observing a significant increase. And the reason is because it's still a transmission of what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz.
The agency warns that continued disruption, particularly around key routes like the Strait of Hormuz, could push prices higher in the coming months.
We have 30% of the fertilizers moving across the Strait of Hormuz, 35% of oil moving across the Strait of Hormuz, between 20 to 25% of natural gas, and 45% of sulfur. And the Strait of Hormuz is not open for more than 30 or 40 days. Then as we move in the crop calendar, between April and May, key exporting countries will have to make decisions. We have learned a lot through COVID-19, through the war in Ukraine, and especially now, which is different to both of them. What we are recommending right now in the short term is to find any alternative routes to be able to move inputs. And for example, we can have what is happening right now between Venezuela, where the sanctions have been reduced, so that inputs can be imported from Venezuela, what is happening in other parts of the world to try to facilitate the mobility of these inputs.
The Food and Agriculture Organization warns that lower income, import-dependent nations, particularly in Africa and parts of South Asia, could be forced to cut food purchases or turn to lower quality supplies if prices continue to rise.
The countries that are most impacted by any increase in price of food will be the net food importing countries. How much they will impact it depends also on their income. Gulf countries, for example, are rich countries, so the prices could increase, they will be able to buy the same. They will pay a higher price. But countries that have debt stress, like many countries in Africa and some in South Asia, won't have that capacity. So the decision, if prices increase, of the food import bill is basically to buy less or to buy lower quality of commodities so that they can continue to have the food that they need. So yes, the most vulnerable will be affected. Right now, the impact also goes into the Gulf countries because they cannot import food, and also goes into Iran, where it's a self-sufficient country mostly, 20% is imported.
Around a third of global oil and fertilizers pass through the strait, making agriculture highly vulnerable to prolonged disruption. The impact is expected to hit developing, food-importing countries the hardest. Food and Agriculture Organization is urging countries to secure alternative supply routes, protect vulnerable populations, and invest in long-term resilience to withstand future shocks.
Now, while many around the world spent Easter weekend with family or at church, over 50 couples tied the knot in South Africa on the very first same day. Side by side, the couples gathered to exchange vows, each stepping into married life at the same time. The ceremony took place during Easter celebrations at the International Pentecostal Holiness Church in Johannesburg. The event offered couples a chance to celebrate their unions together in a shared ceremony. The church hosts mass weddings throughout the year, including at Easter, in September, and over Christmas. Now to some color. And the streets of Nigeria's biggest city, Lagos, has come alive as crowds marked its vibrant Fanti Carnival, a cultural tradition dating back more than 200 years, which is rooted in Afro-Brazilian returnees known as Aguda. Take a look.
Right now.
Lagos came alive as the city's Fanti Carnival brought music, colour and dance to the streets, reviving a cultural tradition that dates back more than 2 centuries. Performers wore elaborate costumes including dragons, Egyptian-themed outfits and animals like bulls, cows and ostriches.
Amazing, a lot of color, a lot of different costumes and a lot of culture, so it's really nice.
Disabled participants also joined the festivities in decorated wheelchairs. The carnival originates from the Olowo Gobowo community and was influenced by Brazilian visitors centuries ago, spreading across Lagos Island and surrounding areas. People of all ages danced through the streets while crowds joined in singing. The event remains one of Lagos's most vibrant cultural celebrations, blending history, tradition and contemporary flair.
All right, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.